Imagine if you were stuck in another country, away from your family, trying to get home, but you couldn't. When 9/11 happened, this was the case for many families. Even families overseas suffered from the events unfolding in the U.S. With how well 9/11 is known throughout the world, it may seem strange to think that 9/11 also affected U.S. citizens who were stationed overseas. In one soldier's case, Mr. Dustin Dalton, he was stranded in Germany for days.
I was stationed in Germany at the time. We were there doing a mission. I was working with the Germans and doing some Black Hawk cross-training with them for the birds. So it was me and 3 other pilots, and there was another group of us that flew over. When 9/11 happened, I was actually in the Army Chow Hall, which is like your cafeteria where you go to eat lunch. And I was actually eating lunch at the time because of the hour difference. So I'm walking through, and they have TVs in the cafeteria. So they had the news, and I was just happened to catch a glimpse of the first plane. After it just hit, I see the aftermath, and then the ticket counter and all the news breaks. The first plane had hit, and I'm there in the chow hall getting ready to eat my lunch, and then I see the second plane come across the TV, and I just like, oh shit, and it's just you don't think I was. God, 9/11 happened. I think I had just not quite turned 21 or was 21, I think. Anyway, and I'm thinking, oh no, that's not good. And all of a sudden across the PA you hear, brrrt, brrrt, brrrt. Attention, this is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Man your battle stations, brrrt, brrrt. So I'm like, me, my pilot, and my medic, and the other pilot all in the chow hall, and we're like, oh fuck. So we literally drop everything, and we go sprinting to our birds. We throw all of our gear on, and we're locked and loaded. All of our weapons are that we have on us. We've got our M4s and our 9mm, and we're like, okay, now what?
9/11 is just one example of a trial that Mr. Dalton faced during his time in the Army. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. My name is Taylor Ball.
And I'm Kylie Taylor, and today we'll be talking about Officer Dustin Dalton and his time in the U.S. Army.
Mr. Dustin Dalton's story begins in Ames, Iowa, which is where he was born. He grew up in a military family, so, as you can imagine, life was strict and stable. His parents preached respect and accountability, so he never thought twice about being addressed by an adult.
Mr. Dalton was born in Ames, Iowa, and he moved to Nevada when he started middle school. He also graduated from Nevada and enlisted on his 17th birthday.
After doing some research, we found that enlisted soldiers are the backbone of the Army. The enlistment process begins your career as an enlisted soldier in the active Army or Army Reserve. However, filling out the application is not a commitment to serve. Mr. Dustin Dalton was inspired to be in the Army by his past generations. His mom's side had many people in the Army, and his dad, grandfather, and uncle were all in the Army. This really made him want to join because he wanted to follow in his family's footsteps. Mr. Dalton was very proud of his father and wanted to do the things he did.
Another big reason he wanted to join the Army is because he wanted to travel around the world but didn't have enough money to. Fortunately, the Army has many great resources for its soldiers. For example, the Army offers you money for education, comprehensive health care, generous vacation time, family services, support groups, and special pay and cash allowances to cover the cost of living.
I did what they called a split op training.
After much thought about joining the Army, Mr. Dalton finally swore in and his parents signed the paper saying he was allowed to join. We didn't exactly know what a split-op training was, so we did some research and found that, according to the Michigan Army National Guard website, the split-op training program allows you to join the Guard while still attending high school or even college. In order to enlist, you must be at least 17 years old, a junior in high school, and have written permission from a parent or legal guardian. You would attend basic combat training in the summer. So between his junior and senior year, he attended basic training in Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
After he completed basic training, he went back to high school and graduated. From high school, he went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for his first round of AIT schooling, which is where he learned his job and what he wanted to do in the Army. He became a Black Hawk engineer, which is the person who tells the pilot where to go and if there's anything in the way. When Mr. Dalton had to, he would also help fix the Black Hawks. He remembers his first experience in a Black Hawk.
The first time I was in a Black Hawk was when I was at AIT school, and that was actually climbing around on top of the bird and in the bird. So it was really fun learning to work on it, but my first actual flight was pretty cool.
Because we didn't really know anything about Blackhawks, we did a little research and found out some really interesting facts about them. Blackhawks are primarily used to carry troops and help other aircraft. Most often when a person watches a war movie, Black Hawk helicopters are the props used because of their multi-purpose and sleek look. Apart from the primary uses, these helicopters can also be used for medical evacuations, search and rescue missions, and armed escorting.
There are many different models of Blackhawks, but the model that Mr. Dalton was in the most was called a UH-60. This model was equipped with twin engines and 4 spinning blades. The UH-60 can lift about 44,000 pounds, which is approximately 11 family cars. Since he worked in the back of a Black Hawk the majority of the time, he had to wear the right clothing. There is a wide variety of different Black Hawk clothing products, including footwear, gloves, headwear, jackets, shirts, tactical pants, and underclothing. If you're headed into a potentially dangerous situation, it's important that you're dressed the part with the clothing that is functional, durable, and comfortable, ensuring that you'll be able to perform at your best. Mr. Dalton recalled one of his favorite memories in a Black Hawk.
Pilot and the new junior pilot. So this pilot was fresh out of his AIT schooling, and he didn't know me quite well, and I didn't know him either. But the senior pilot that I was with him and I were pretty close friends. So the young lieutenant, we were out getting ready to go on a flight, and the young lieutenant literally threw his bags at me. Said, "Hey, here, Sergeant Dalton, put my bags up for me." And he proceeded to get into the bird, and I was like, "Whoa, sir!" I said, "I'm not your baggage claim lady. I'm not the stewardess. So you need to get your own." Pardon my French, your own shit back here and strap it down. I'm just to make sure that when we take off, it doesn't shift in flight, sir. And he seemed to not really see it my way, and he was not really yelling at me, was trying to correct me, and I'm giving him the proper respect of standing of attention. And when an officer's, face-to-face contact, you're supposed to do that for proper respect. And the senior pilot looks back, he's like, "Hey, Sergeant Dalton, what's going on?" And I said, "Hey, sir, this young lieutenant is telling me how to do my job." And the major said, "What?" And I said, "Yes, sir, he's trying to tell me to put his shit," sorry, his own stuff away back here. He thinks I'm the stewardess or the baggage lady claim. He's like, "Oh, F that, Sergeant Dalton, you stay right there." "Yes, sir, not moving, sir." So he comes around, he says, "Come here, LT." And LT's like, What's going on, sir?" He's like, "You don't talk to Sergeant Dalton like that. Sergeant Dalton's been in more combat than you'll ever see, and he's been in longer than you. You don't ever talk to Sergeant Dalton like that. If I catch you again, you're going to be in so much trouble." And he proceeded to yell at him, and I'm standing there at still attention and just kind of smiling, kind of trying not to giggle and laugh. And he finally said, "You go apologize, Sergeant Dalton, right now. That man is there to save your life. If our bird goes down and we land, he's our only hope to get back home." "Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir." So after that, he apologized, and I had some coarse words because the major said, "Sergeant Dalton said you are free to speak to the LT right now if you'd like." And I'm like, "Are you sure, sir?" He's like, "Yep, have at him, Sergeant Dalton." Oh, I lit him up. I was like mad. I was like, "Look, dude," I said, "I know you're fresh off the boat, but I said you got to learn. I know you're thinking you're king shit right now just because you got out of flight school, but it don't work around here." I said, "You need to know your people." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir." And I was like, "That's cool, man." I said, "If I catch you doing it again, or any of my soldiers," I said, "we're going to have words again." And he said, ever since that, me and him have been like buddies, just like that, the whole entire time. So, Anybody now, they know not to mess with me just because we all look out for each other. We're one big family, all right? You have your new kids that try to get the feel of the land, and some think they know everything when they come fresh from school, but sometimes somebody has to put them in their place.
As you can tell, Dustin loved his job, especially working with Blackhawks. Even when people made it hard to enjoy at times, he knew that he wanted to make a difference. Apart from the Blackhawks, Mr. Dalton had a few other memorable experiences. Remember how we talked about his 9/11 experience in the beginning of the story? Well, there is more to it. Dustin spent a few days armed and ready for an order to be given.
And you see people in the guard towers. There's never hardly anybody in the guard towers, and all of a sudden, boom, there's like 4 dudes in each guard tower around the base. Because where we could see the airfield, you could see the towers, and then there's towers that are right on the airfield. So we see people up there in their full Kevlar and body armor that I brought in. That's their infantry stuff, and they've got everything on. and this is like no joke. So we're waiting. They wouldn't let anybody off post. They wouldn't let anybody in post. Even if you had a military ID, you still couldn't get in and off post. We were literally like locked down for 3 days. So those 3 days we had to sit by our bird. Nobody was allowed to come in our bird or see our birds or anything. So we were literally sleeping in the cabin of our Black Hawk, and we were fortunate enough we had some people that were able to at least bring us some meals, or we had our MREs with us that we just bring just in case if we go down. So we were able to eat those. And so finally after day 3 we finally get the all clear to like, hey, you can come back home. So we ended up finishing the mission for our Blackhawks, and then we got on an airplane and finally flew back home. So now, once 9/11 happened, I couldn't call my mom and dad and let them know I'm all right. They just assumed, they knew that I was flying home on a commercial plane, and they didn't know if that was my plane or my route or anything. So my dad, like I said, my dad's prior military, and my mom's kind of freaking out. My dad's doing okay because he's got people that he knows in Germany, and he's asking them, and they said, nope, everybody hasn't left base. He's somewhere on base. He's safe. He's all right. My dad's like, well, I just want to make sure, okay, keep me posted. So they stay in touch, and so finally, like I said, I finally got home, and I was able to call home. Is when I was getting on the plane right before we loaded the plane to fly back to the States. I called my mom, my dad, and called my mom and said, Mom, I'm fine, okay. And she's worried. She's a mom. My dad's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, you? Like, yep, I'm okay. He said, let us know when you land. I'm like, all right. So, and that was pretty much the end of my 9/11 story.
As you can imagine, that would not be a very enjoyable experience when you're being forced to stay in one place for days and not leave. Luckily, he got home safely, and this has become one of his favorite memories to reflect on.
To this day, Dustin is still serving for the U.S. Army. Although he is not deployed, he still attributes to the protection of our country. Dustin learned a lot about respect from being in the Army. Since he grew up in an Army family, he always did what his parents said the first time and didn't procrastinate. He knew if he did it, he wouldn't get hurt because they weren't there to hurt him. So when he went to the Army, he was well prepared because his parents were strict and taught him how to be respectful. He also learned about loyalty, honor, and doing your duty. As you can see, the Army greatly impacted Mr. Dalton and has forever changed his life.
I really say I was a troublemaker in high school, but I got into some trouble. But I think with my parents being military, kind of a lot of that respect and honor and loyalty and duty and doing all the right things was a big influence in my life growing up. And pretty much when my parents told me to do something, I did it right away. I didn't be like, do I have to? No. It didn't work in my family. If you didn't do it, you were going to get in trouble some shape or form. So just going into the military was pretty easy for me because, like I said, that military background, I knew what was expected and what needed to be done. I did the things that they told me to do because if they told me to do it and I did it, I knew I wasn't going to get hurt because they're not there to hurt me, they're there to teach me. So.
Dustin spends his free time playing war video games and hanging out with his wife and 2 daughters. He enjoys volunteering at the local Legion and being a part of educating kids. We want to thank Dustin for his service and the time he dedicated to talk to us.
We would also like to thank all the veterans, still serving and retired, for their time spent protecting our country. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Kylie Taylor.
And I'm Taylor Ball, and this was the story of Dustin Dalton.